Hey fellas, this is Vince Miller. Thank you so much for joining me for this devotional today. We begin a brand new book of the Bible. We're in the Old Testament, the book of Daniel. Thanks for voting. I'm hoping you're going to love this book. It's got all kinds of relevant material for the time and the days that we live. Today I'm going to read chapter 1, verses 1 through 2. It reads, in the third year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, that's about 605 BC, so about 2,600 years ago, Nebuchadnezzar, enemy king, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it, took it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand with some of the vessels of the house of God. So I'm going to come back to this verse tomorrow because it's going to take a little bit of time to set up the book and the characters here in the first few verses. But right here in these two verses, we're confronted with a monumental question. And the question we're all going to ask is this: why did God give his land and people and national leader over to be enslaved by an enemy superpower? Why the wording here, and the Lord gave? Why is it said that way? So when we ask a question like this here, there's at least one thing we got to keep in mind, and then two reasons why I believe that God gave them over. So the one thing we have to keep in mind when we ask these big questions of God is this: that we might be asking a question of God from a myopic view of the given situation. Because fellas, there's always a lot of backstory, right? And there's a lot of backstory that actually landed Israel in the predicament that they're in right here at the beginning of Daniel. Yet we don't see this all the time. And with this, we need to remember that God always sees a much bigger picture and has a longer view of life and history and people than we ever will. We only see what we see and thus draw conclusions and assumptions only from that. Therefore, we ask these big questions of God because we're kind of curious about God and what he's doing here, and we don't fully understand everything. Second, there are really two reasons that God hands this people over. First, he hands them over because, well, God is just. Therefore, he must discipline his children. Now, we don't like this about God, but he has to do this to be true to his character. For him to be a just God, he has to, well, deliver justice. Second, he does this here. He hands them over because they were sinful, and he promised he would punish them for their disobedience. I want you to listen to the words of Isaiah in Isaiah chapter 39, verses 6 through 7. It reads this way. It states, "Behold, the days are coming when all that is in your house and that which your fathers have stored up till this day shall be carried to Babylon. Nothing shall be left, says the Lord. And some of your own sons who will come from you, whom you will father, shall be taken away, and they shall be eunuchs in the palace of the king of Babylon." So, fellas, sometimes in this life, we don't take God's teaching and his directions and warnings seriously enough, do we? Thus, we distance ourselves from him and his truth to do the things that we want to do. And as a result, we slowly look more and more like men of the world rather than men of God. And if we become men of the world, then God gives us over to the world to do what it is we want to do because he wants a different kind of man for his kingdom. Listen to what Paul says in Romans 1:28, very well-known verse. Paul says, "And since they did not see fit to acknowledge God, God gave them up to a debased mind to do what ought not to be done." Those are worthy words to remember. They're a warning to us that God will give us over if we are disobedient to him, if we do not follow his will, his instructions, his teaching. So, gentlemen, as we begin the book of Daniel, be prepared to listen to God as he says some hard things to his nation and to his people. This means that God might have some hard things to say to us and our nation in our time. And remember, he's just. So the time to respond to to his justice and discipline and teaching is right now. Fellas, thanks for joining me today. If this has blessed you, bless someone else by sharing it with them. And with that, I'll see you right back here again tomorrow.